Hey there, today I am harvesting from my kitchen garden. It is the beginning of July. For my climate up here in the Chicago area, I'm about 45 days past the last frost date. So come inside my garden with me and see everything I'm harvesting today. Hey there, my name is Nicole Burke and I'm the founder of Gardenary. Gardenary exists to make gardening ordinary for everybody. So be sure to subscribe to the Gardenary channel. Send us an email at hello@gardenary.com and we have a free gardening resource to share with you for doing it. So today I've got my pruners, my favorite harvest basket, and I'm going to show you the things that I can be pulling from my own kitchen garden in the beginning of July. Now, as I said in the beginning, we are just about 45 days past the last frost date. We passed frost right around the middle of May. We actually did have some really low temperatures at the end of May that kind of frostbit some of my warm season plants. And you guys, if you've been around here much, you know that I love greens. So I have prioritized greens in my cool season plants more than my warm season. And you'll see that in the things that I'm harvesting now, because I really could be harvesting more fruiting plants. But I like to prioritize greens because I can eat them up and use them all the time. So first we're going to start with Swiss chard. So we've got Swiss chard in front of both of my front beds here. I love having Swiss chard near the front of the garden. To harvest Swiss chard, I like to go to the base of the plant and cut the outer stems. So when I do that, I am making sure I get the oldest stems of the plant, and I'm always making sure I leave enough stems for regrowth. And there's way more than I can even harvest here. I'm going to pull these out. I always try when I'm harvesting too to get any leaves. Look at that, so pretty, right? I try to get any leaves that don't look great. I'll try to grab those and go ahead and relieve the plant of those stems. But of course I want to get some ones that look good too because, well, I want to eat them. So I'm just kind of going from plant to plant. I have about 3 or 4 plants here at the front of the bed. So I'm literally just taking a little bit from each plant so that they all have space to keep growing, time to keep growing too. So that's our first layer. I could definitely harvest more Swiss chard. I've got some on this side and I've got a lot in the back of the beds too. I'll maybe take one cut from each of these other spots just to encourage more growth. So one of the things about the garden, especially the vegetable garden, is that these plants want to be harvested from. The more you harvest them and cut from them, the more you'll encourage them to grow, and you give more air to the plant, more sunlight to the leaves. It's just good for the plant all the way around. So it's something you want to make a practice of. I'd say even if you're not eating from the garden yourself, it's a really good practice to just come out and harvest fairly often. I would say at least weekly from your greens you want to be harvesting. So again, I'm almost done. I'm just kind of cutting around the garden space from all these Swiss chard plants. I think probably altogether I might have 10 plants between the two ends of the bed. So pretty lovely. Swiss chard is a superfood, such a good thing to grow in the kitchen garden. So prolific, you can use it for all kinds of things. I was just looking at a recipe I'm going to use to make wraps with these. So I'm going to let these be like the wrap material. So I'll keep you posted. Okay, so that's one, and you can see we've already really filled up the basket with that Swiss chard. So let's move on to our next green, and that is kale, of course. Kale, yeah. So I have this red Russian kale here in the front 2 beds, and if you missed it, I did a huge kale harvest from these plants just a couple weeks ago. And I've been trying to harvest from these more often because I'm trying to make more air and sun space for my fruiting plants in here. It's kind of slowed down my tomato growth a little bit because I have these huge kale leaves that are kind of blocking sunlight and air from my tomatoes. So I'm cutting this kale. You can see how much I've cut just from about 5 plants. Then I'm going to do so on this side as well. And again, by cutting from these plants, you're stimulating more growth, you're giving more sunlight and air to the existing plants, and you're also removing, pest infestation. So I noticed just the other day when I cut from my kale plants, I was trying to store some in the freezer for winter. And as I was kind of cleaning up the leaves to store them, I noticed like pests, like little cocoons of caterpillars. The caterpillars weren't out yet, but there were cocoons that like moths had laid. And so I was like, oh, I'm so glad I got these out of the garden before the moths, the cocoons turn into caterpillars that would eat these things to death. So you can see there is a little bit of holes in the kale. So there's a little bit of pest pressure. So by harvesting more often, you kind of remove a little bit of the buffet line, if you know what I mean. All right, so we have got a ton of greens here, and now you kind of wonder, is there any room for anything else? So this is a great picture of really the way the kitchen garden provides for us and the way I like to grow, which is primarily greens, like loads and loads of greens. And then you pile on your fruit and your root crops on top of here, but you start with greens. So next up, I want to do some celery. So I've been growing some cutting celery, and I want to show you how to harvest that. So we have a plant right here. We have several plants. They're kind of tucked in here. So you're going to have to, kind of reach in with me and see, but this is called cutting celery. And these are just little stems that make a great crunch on a salad. You can use them kind of in a raw dish, like for dipping. But there's a few stems of celery. As you can see, this celery also has been shaded a little bit by all the kale, but it's still doing really well. Celery generally is a cool weather plant, so it's not going to mind having some shade during the warmest part of the year. And this is July. We're having, I think, like record high temps. I think a lot of the country is. But we've got temperatures in the 90s pretty regularly here. So a little shade never hurt any celery. So that's our celery. Again, the colors are still green here, right? So we're going to put that celery here on the harvest basket. I'm going to grab a little bit more. I have a plant over here that's doing really well. Again, it's a little bit hidden by the kale, but I'm just going to pop in and grab what I can. Celery juice has been all the rage for a few years, and this is fantastic celery for making celery juice. You can actually juice the entirety of the plant, not just the stems, and the leaves have tons of nutrients in them. All right, so I'm still in my front 2 beds, and my basket's so full. All right, next we're gonna do some peppers. So I have some shishito peppers. I have about 6 plants in the 2 beds. And these are really starting to fruit out. You can see right here. And it's definitely time to be harvesting these. So if you can see this shishito, I'm just gonna cut right at the tip, like that. And these are similar to your greens in that you definitely want to be harvesting them often. When you leave fruit like this on the plant for a long time, you really discourage the growth. I'm going to cut this kale leaf so it's not shading the pepper. So you want to keep cutting. You want to be harvesting from these at least weekly. And really anytime you see a fruit that looks big enough to eat, I would cut it, because you're just going to encourage, see all these, you've got all these baby peppers here. And when you cut the mama pepper, that really encourages the plant to put its energy toward the new fruit. Shishito peppers are one of my favorites to grow. They tend to produce a lot of peppers in a short amount of time. They're not too hot. They're also not too sweet. And I can cook them so easily. My family likes a lot of Asian inspired dishes. So that's what I got off of 3 plants. This is really my first harvest from those plants. And then I think I have some more over here on this side. So we're gonna come on to this side. I've got shishitos up here as well. And again, this is with really minimal sunlight. These plants could have really used more sun, but you can see they're starting to really reach for sunlight. I'm gonna cut back this Swiss chard. Harvesting really gives you a chance, especially if you use my intensive planting method. Harvesting gives you a chance, I'm gonna come over here for you. Harvesting gives you a chance to kind of clean out and make sure you're giving everything the space it needs to grow to its fullest ability. So it's, you know, I like to say, tell our Rooted Garden clients and Gardenary students that really the main task I want you to be doing in the garden is harvesting. So if you have a lot of different things you're growing at once, then you're gonna get to go out, harvest a lot, take things from the garden often, and when you're out there, it'll prompt you to do a little bit of tending too. So for instance, you know, I grab these peppers and then I look and I see, oh, there's this yellow kale leaf. So I'm just gonna get this out of the garden. And I snap that off, and it's like just a little bit of tending can go a really long way. So then, those are my peppers. Those are my shishitos. And next we're gonna check out the tomatoes. So if you've been watching, I've had sugar snap peas on these trellises, and just this week I pulled them out of the garden, and we are now giving the trellis only to the cherry tomatoes here. So now we have just our first few tomatoes that are ripening on the vine. And today's the day to pick. So same idea with our tomatoes is that you want to pick them often. So we really don't want to leave those red tomatoes on the vine any longer than you know, a day really. So the minute I pull these off, it's going to free up the plant to put its energy toward ripening the other ones and producing some more tomatoes up the vine. So that is my first harvest of my tomatoes. So these are a grape kind, and then here we have some sun gold. So I'm going to harvest the first of these as well. I know it's kind of sunny out here. Hopefully you can see. So we have our first few tomatoes, not too much, but just enough to give you hope that, you know, that more is on its way. So there you have it. Not quite done with even the first 2 beds, and we have tons of kale, tons of Swiss chard, celery, and tomatoes, and our first harvest of shishito peppers. And we're just at the front 2 sides of the bed. Now I do have a surprise in here that I didn't notice until I started cleaning out the other day, and that is my first eggplant. So I am growing a like a Thai small eggplant here, and you can see the very first one is ready to harvest. So I'm going to come in with my pruners and cut right here at the top. And there we go. Just one, but the promise of many, many more to come, right? So I added eggplants. I've never done eggplants at the front of my beds until this year. There's a great book called The Edible Front Yard, and she has a couple of plants she calls supermodels, and one of them is the eggplant. All right, so we've got some eggplant to add to our color here, and lots of shishitos, and then we have a few different kinds of peppers here. Still in the first two beds, my friends. Is this crazy or what? All right, so let's check this plant. We have a few larger peppers we're gonna go ahead and harvest. Now, all peppers start out green. I don't know if you've ever tried to grow like red peppers or yellow peppers. Those colors come later on the plant. The first color you get is green. So if I wanted to let these peppers change color, I could let them grow a little bit longer. But my focus right now is green. So I'm gonna harvest these here and then check all my other plants. It looks like I have a few other peppers here on this little plant. Actually, some more shishitos. What do you know? Of course, shishitos are my fave. So 3 more shishitos. And then I do a little search back here just to make sure I've gotten all the peppers. There's one more. I always try to be sure to harvest my peppers with pruners, not with my hands, because you can really end up breaking the branches really quickly and kind of ruining your plants. It's a big bummer. All right, can y'all see my glow? I'm really starting to sweat. All this harvesting is so much work. Okay, it's kind of a game of hide and seek, I'm not gonna lie, especially with the way that I plant these gardens. All right, last thing I'm gonna harvest in here is some parsley. So I have a ton of curly parsley here, and this is gonna make a great salad or a great sauce. Years ago, I posted one of my clients' gardens that had a ton of parsley in it. And I asked everybody, what should I do with all this parsley? And one of our audience members, she said chimichurri. And I had never, I don't think I'd ever made chimichurri before. And so I took her advice and I made it. And y'all, it was the most delicious thing ever, especially with fresh parsley. So we're gonna use this to make some chimichurri. All right, there you have it. I'm officially sweaty and I've officially harvested so much goodness from just this one little front bed. So we have loads of greens, lots and lots of celery. We have peppers. We have one little eggplant. We have shishitos and some other big peppers. And then our first taste of cherry tomatoes. And that all came from about 30 square feet of garden in a place that honestly I have not kept up tending as much as I should. So I hope this gives you a little picture of what's possible to harvest in early July, or maybe a different time depending on where you live. And I hope it encourages you that you can grow so much even in a small space. So thanks so much for watching. If you want to learn more about putting the garden into your everyday life, Gardenary has a new membership called Gardenary 365. It's a daily habit program where you start to bring the garden into your everyday life in simple ways, just like harvesting daily from the garden. So check it out. You can Google Gardenary 365 or learn more about it at the link below this video. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers to harvesting.